Hi, everybody. It is Thursday, May 14th, according to the calendar. Time marches on, but my sweatpants remain a constant to all of those out there wondering. What I've actually decided to do is mark the passage of time by the release of important things. So, for example, today is not really Thursday, May 14th. It is actually 50 days until Hamilton comes out on Disney Plus, right? Or it is 21 days until our first Summer of Live 2020 episode. Doesn't that make things a little bit, it makes me feel a little bit better. Other things that make life better are, as I said earlier, gifts. So say hi with a gift in the comments. Everyone's saying hi. Hi, guys.
I see a hi from New Jersey.
A hi from Jersey, Gwen Galvin. Megan Myers says, Andrew always killing it with the shirt choice. We were actually just talking about that before we went live, Megan. I was like, he has a really
good
awesome
shirt,
as always.
I have to give Maddie credit for that. So this is a gift.
It's good.
It was a good one. It's a good color. It's a good pattern. I love it. All right. I am Jenny Guy. I am the Director of Marketing for Mediavine. Hello. Thank you for joining us. And today we are talking about accessibility, which is always an important topic, but it is definitely at the forefront of the minds of content creators right now. Today, we're going to talk about the ADA and how it pertains to website owners with two awesome experts, which I have here. I'm so excited. First, we have Jamie Lieberman, who is the owner and founder of #Legal. She's been a practicing lawyer for 15 years. As an experienced entrepreneur, Jamie understands the unique needs of business owners at different stages in their organization's growth. Today, she partners with clients across verticals, including influencer marketing, creative services, and e-commerce. She has a deep commitment to making legal accessible and regularly speaks about legal matters, the art of negotiation, and entrepreneurial topics at leading industry events such as Alt Summit, Podcast Movement, and FenCon, and as an expert source for media like Digiday and Forbes. You can also catch her as a co-host for the Fearless Business podcast. Hi, Jamie. Welcome.
Hi.
It's been a while. Welcome back.
I'm very excited to be here.
I'm very excited too. Jamie, also, in case anyone hears, she is rocking out to some trap music that's happening a few floors below her office. But Jamie, can you explain a little bit about why you have music playing?
I do. And in fact, I just got a visitor who doesn't realize that I'm on a live video stream. So okay. I'm sitting in my office, which is very exciting that I'm able to actually get into my office. But my office is in like a large industrial loft above a beer garden, who has decided that they need to play music right now. And then I got a visitor, even though literally there's been no one in this building for the last however many days. So it's just really good timing.
Always. It's like the doorbell ringing and all that stuff. And as I said before we started, nothing goes with accessibility talk like
trap music.
Yeah. All right, my other guest in the fantastic shirt, Andrew Wilder, has been building, fixing, and maintaining websites since 1998 and is the founder and owner of NerdPress, where he combines his passions for food and technology by helping professional food bloggers and entrepreneurs who would rather be building their businesses instead of monkeying with their websites. He is the creator of the popular food blog Eating Rules and the annual October Unprocessed Challenge, which has helped more than 30,000 people change their lives by cutting out processed food. Andrew is a noted expert in both the culinary and technical fields, having spoken on a variety of topics for conferences such as WordCamp LAX and the International Association of Culinary Professionals, Food and Wine, Tech Munch, Blog Her, and Blog Her Food. Also, both of you have spoken at a conference that I would like to mention, which is the Mediavine conference, and that was not in your bios, so
time to update.
Judgment. He has been profiled in the LA Times, New York Times, and Eating Well magazine. Andrew, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, happy to be here. I feel almost like I'm not in my house.
Isn't it nice?
It's like a staycation meeting kind of thing-ish.
It's a very it's a good reason to like shower and change your clothing to speak to people that you're not used to speaking to. I love them. It's really all that I have these days. So it's nice. If you have got questions about website accessibility or the ADA or anything, where Andrew gets his clothing, what Jamie is listening to unintentionally, please put them in the comments. So and then another thing that we would love to hear from you guys in the comments is what have you personally done to make your website more accessible? We'd love to hear some of those options. But I want to start out just kind of on a basic level here, which is I know why you're both here, and you both have fans watching who are familiar with your excellent work. But for those watching who might not know the two of you, please tell us in your own words what you have to offer on the topic of website accessibility. And we'll start with Andrew on that one.
All right. So I'll be totally honest. I am not like the capital T expert on accessibility. I started on sort of this accessibility journey about a year ago. I decided, like, I saw this kind of coming down the pipeline where it's like, hey, wait a minute, there's like a chatter about accessibility coming, and like, Google pushed out speed, they pushed out SSL, and accessibility is becoming more and more prominent and more important. And then with all these lawsuits happening, which Jamie will talk about, I feel like we were staring down the barrel of accessibility. So last year I decided I wanted to learn more about it. And so I actually pitched to you guys to speak, was it last year? Yeah. Speak at the Mediavine Austin conference.
Yeah.
And I pitched it in like February, and the conference was like November. And I'm like, okay, now I have a deadline. So it forced me to actually like sit down and start really digging into this. And I went to a number of WordCamps, which are fantastic resources. I'll give a side plug for WordCamps. They're local meetups, basically, all about WordPress. And I attended every single accessibility session. And through that, I started to see patterns emerge, and I learned where to go to learn more about it. And I just really dug in. And the biggest thing I learned is that accessibility is not an either or thing. It applies to everybody. So, we tend to think about accessibility as applying to like somebody who is 100% blind, but actually it runs on a continuum. And accessibility ultimately is just usability for your website. And I've been focusing on usability for a long time. So this is just like one sliver of the usability pie. So that's been my sort of accessibility journey thus far.
I love hearing that you put yourself on a timeline, which is great, because I think it's something that nobody would say, I don't care about accessibility. Accessibility is stupid. Nobody would say, no one would out loud say that because we would shame them. But but in terms of thinking about it becoming a really relevant topic and something that is important, unfortunately, it takes things like lawsuits to make it like, and now I really have to think about it. But love that you put yourself on the timeline of a Mediavine conference. That's awesome. And it was a great session. Andrew actually also wrote a couple of great blog posts about accessibility that we're going to share for the Mediavine blog down there in the comments. Jamie, same question to you. Tell us about your accessibility journey.
So people tend to only talk to me when something happens like a lawsuit. So I've also been interested in this topic for quite some time. And I went to Andrew's session in Austin, and it was fantastic. I loved it. And he handles it so well. And it's actually one of the things that made me sort of more interested in thinking about it, because accessibility lawsuits from the time, it really, you've got it down, and I love it. So accessibility lawsuits from 2017 to 2019 have gone from 800 in 2017 to over 2,200 in 2018 and 2019. We could talk a little bit about the state of the law, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But I had met a couple of people because I practice in New York, and New York is one of the hotbeds of accessibility litigation for websites. So I had met a couple of attorneys who really practice in this area a couple years ago. That started me being very interested because of the nature of my practice and working with online business owners. And so I started looking into it. And then once I talked to Andrew about it, because he had mentioned this to me before, that's when I really started to do a lot of research just to see what the deal was, what was going on. I had spoken to some people who had gotten those demand letters. So I just think it's a really important topic, one that needs to be talked about so that people are not facing a demand letter, but are able to start putting things in place now to hopefully avoid that.
And yes, it's always a very good idea to do things to avoid being sued. So I'm a fan of that personally. Yeah, Andrew's topic was awesome. People are asking if we have video from that session in Austin. We do. We're releasing those one a week, and we will definitely be releasing that soon. So what we would say is subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's possible that could be seen very soon on that YouTube channel, that video, and Jamie's as well from Austin. So lots of good things. So while we can all agree accessibility important all the time, it is having a moment right now. And I would like to know why, because as most things go in the content creator world, we're all guilty of this in this space. The Facebook groups are basically where we find out what is trending and happening and why. So what is going on right now that is making this so hot? And Jamie, it's actually centered around things that are happening in your neck of this woods.
Yeah, so I think we should back up a little bit and sort of talk about the ADA in general. So yes, the ADA is a law from 1990. disability. And it's a great law. And it talks about sort of 3 different areas related to Americans with disabilities. And so it's employment, it's the public sector, and then it's something called public accommodations. Public accommodation really is the focus. That's Title III, which a lot of people have heard. Mm-hmm. And in it, Title III essentially says that public accommodations need to be accessible to all people. And so the real issue came from, what is a public accommodation? Well, in 1990, a public accommodation was not defined as a website because we didn't really have those in 1990 the way that we do now. And so public accommodations had a clear list, and we could talk about restaurants, hotels, etc. I mean, we sort of have an idea, and you have a general idea of what a public accommodation is. And so as the web started to get increasingly more a place of public accommodation, there was no change in the law as it's written. So what happens when there's no change in a law, but society changes, is people go to court. And so essentially a series of lawsuits started by a number of organizations seeking for accessibility for Americans with disabilities, to say that websites should be considered public accommodations that need to follow these accessibility guidelines. And there are no guidelines in the law. So Andrew will probably talk more about the guidelines that were sort of set forth by this worldwide association, WCAG. And so they were set forth. They're not law, but they're widely accepted as being a way that you can comply with accessibility for Americans with disabilities, or people with accessibilities, I should say. And so people with disabilities. And so the litigation started, and as these things, they go slow. And so what ended up happening, and why there's been such an increase, is in 2019, there was a lawsuit from with Domino's Pizza that went all the way through the courts, all the way up to the Supreme Court, which essentially found that Domino's website, because it had a nexus to a public accommodation, which was like a store, needed to be accessible, the website as well. And so that was pretty narrow. Many of us do not have stores or brick and mortars. And so a lot of people thought, well, that's it, then that's where we are right now. And the Supreme Court actually declined to review that, and which meant that they signaled that we agree with this. In other parts of the country, however, like New York and Florida and some other states, they have found that the nexus doesn't have to be there, that websites, generally speaking, offering goods and services are public accommodations. And that's why you're seeing these pockets of litigations. None of them have made it far. Frankly, most of them end up getting settled. So you'll see, particularly in New York, there's just a stream of lawsuits happening, and then the same sort of consent settlement form. So settlements are usually held confidential, so it's not clear what people are paying or what they're doing, but it does seem as if there are plans for accessibility in place. And it seems like the trend is that these lawsuits will continue until there is some uniformity to the law.
Fantastic. So what we really need is RBG to step in and lay down the law, as she always does. That's what I know. That's what
she's my
girl. I know. Andrew, from your perspective, what have you been seeing? Because it seems to me like it's hitting like especially in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's gone bananas. So will you tell us what's happening from your perspective, please?
Yeah, so I'm hearing things sort of secondhand directly through clients who have been hearing things in the Facebook groups, or from a friend, or from another attorney who's saying something, or
super reliable sources always.
Yeah, but that's what caused this I'll say freak out collectively in our community. Ultimately it's a good thing. Lawsuits suck, but the change that this is pushing us towards is a very good thing. So I'm glad it's happening. I'm not happy it's happening in this way. But we're seeing a couple of specific areas where sites are really getting hit. It's particularly with image alt tags and a video captioning. So that's actually one of the many specific criteria. So I don't want to get too far into the weeds just yet. But there's, to take a quick step back, actually. So there's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines that Jamie was alluding to there. It's called WCAG for short, and the latest version is 2.1. And then within that, there's 3 levels of compliance. There's A, AA, and AAA. And AA is pretty much considered the gold standard. You don't need AAA to be AAA compliant for a typical site. That's for specialized audiences, and it's really, really, really hard to get AAA. So I'd say don't worry about AAA, but really focus on AA. So to be compliant and not get sued, or at least to be protected from a lawsuit, I should say. You can get sued from anybody, right? To be compliant, your website needs to be to meet all of the WCAG 2.1 AA guidelines. So that is the standard. And you can, we'll I'm sure link to it in the notes. And you know, it's kind of tech jargony. There's a quick reference guide you can go through. But basically the very first guideline, well, I should say there's four categories, principles of accessibility. So all of the guidelines fall into one of these four buckets. The content must be perceivable, which means the content can't be invisible to a user's senses. So if somebody's blind, there needs to be an alternative way of conveying that content. The content needs to be operable, which means the user must be able to operate the interface. So if you think of somebody who doesn't have arms and needs to navigate the interface, how are they going to do that? Or somebody who doesn't have the mobility skill to work a mouse, but they can work a keyboard, is it operable that way? The content needs to be understandable. So the user must be able to understand the interaction and the information and how to operate the interface. So not just be able to operate it, but understand how to operate it. And then the fourth one is robust. The website needs to work on a wide variety of user agents, including any assistive technologies. So like the Chrome or the Safari browser, but also like the JAWS screen reader. So it needs to work on a variety of interfaces. And as the technology evolves, the website should continue to work. So where does that fit in for content publishers? Most of the time, it's the perceivable category for us. The other three things tend to fall under theming. So you know, when you're creating content on your site, you can control what you put into your blog post, right? But there's all the other stuff that wraps around it that's usually controlled by your theme. So I find it's helpful to think of these in two categories. What you're doing when you write a post and all of your content, and then what you're doing when you install a theme or you hire a designer or a developer. The second one is, I'll say, easier. You can install a theme that is already accessible. You can search for in the WordPress repository. There's actually a tag called accessibility, so you can search for themes that are already accessible. And then if you're purchasing a theme, you know, a lot of you use Foodie Pro or one of the other Feast themes. I know Skylar's constantly working on improving the accessibility. So by updating your theme, you're going to get those accessibility improvements. And if you have a custom theme, you know, if you're at the point where you can hire a designer and say, build me something completely from scratch, all you need to do is put in the site must be WCAG 2.1 AA compliant in your contract, and then it's your developer's responsibility, not yours. You know, and you can break compliance by not putting an alt tag on one of your images. So it's important to like tease out the difference of who's responsible for what. But yeah, pass that on to your designer, right? Because they're the ones who will make that correct. So going back to what you can do, the biggest thing we're seeing really is in the very first guideline that all non-text content that's presented to the user needs to have a text alternative that serves the equivalent purpose. So basically, so where the two places where we really see that are alt tags and captioning. So an alt tag is the alternative text field that is in the code associated with an image. And so if you're putting a picture of chocolate cake in your blog post, you want to describe that image to somebody who cannot see the image. So it's not a place to do keyword stuffing. It's not a place to put your Pinterest description and lots of hashtags, which I know Pinterest used to pull from the alt text, which was horrible because then everybody started putting all their Pinterest descriptions in. It's also important to not use the exact same description on every image. You know, imagine you're reading this image or the description to somebody, and you had to go through and read the description to everybody, and you've got 6 images, right? If you said the same thing every time, you'd feel really stupid, right? You'd feel silly, and you'd know you're annoying the other person. That's exactly what happens when someone uses a screen reader. So it's important to describe the image. It could be, you know, a slice of chocolate cake on a blue plate with a fork. It could be overhead view of the, you know, or a detail of the frosting, something to convey why this image is here. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of I could cover all of that, but did that answer your question for now?
That more than did, and we're good. We're totally good. I'm gonna move forward a little bit. So like you basically said, my next question was going to be from kind of a nuts and bolts standpoint. What is the burden upon website owners and content creators? And you said it's currently falling into 2 main categories, which are alt text and closed captions for videos. I know that there was a new WordPress plugin that just came out that might be able to help with alt text. I think it's called Alt Text Tools. Andrew, will you tell us a little bit about that, please?
I'd love to. I'm glad you asked.
Oh, you're welcome.
So in response to this, you know, the problem is, you've got hundreds of posts or even thousands of posts, and I guarantee you none of us were doing alt tags correctly when we started. Well, the challenge is the alt tags are actually hard coded into your post. So when you insert that image and have the alt tag, it gets saved in the database with the text, and you can't easily edit it. The only reliable way at the moment I've found is to actually open up that post in the editor and edit the alt text there. If you edit the alt text in the media library that's associated with the image, it does not retroactively change your post. So if you go through and add alt text to all of your media library images, which is a good idea, but don't think that that's going to fix it, because it won't actually change the content. So we just created a little tool called Alt Text Tools. The first version is really simple. It lets you download a spreadsheet file of all of the images that are actually used in your site and links to the posts where they are and the alt text. So you can basically look through the list and see all the images that don't have alt tags, or all the images that have hashtags in them, right, in the alt text. And you can use that as a checklist to go through and work through that. It's not a particularly difficult process, but it's also not a fun process. I have one client who just fixed 50,000 images. It was her husband, and her VA, I think, working for 2 days straight. So they used our file and used that as their checklist. And then as you're going through, you can re-export the checklist and get an updated version. So if you want to install that plugin, it's free. It's in the WordPress repo. Just search for Alt Text Tool.
It's in the comments.
It's in the comments. Great.
Yep.
And I would love feedback. This is the first version of the plugin. Down the road, as we have time, I'd love to build an interface to make it actually easier to change that, but that's going to take a lot more coding. But if you have any feedback or problems with the plugin, please let us know. I'd love to make sure it works for everybody.
So that is a good way to find out what is not there for you, but bottom line, you're going to have to go in and manually do all of the work right now to make it happen. Okay, so then from a legal standpoint, are people getting busted for alt text, Jamie? Like, is this something how on a scale of 1 to, oh God, what do I have to do right now to get myself better?
So there's no, oh God, because I just really don't want people to panic about it. I just sort of want people to take action about it. Put a plan in place and just start, knowing that the majority of the cases right now are coming from a person who either is blind or is visually impaired in some way. A smaller number of plaintiffs in these cases are a person who is deaf or somehow has a hearing impairment. So those are the two areas I think most litigation is focused on. So I would say, and on top of it, it's like we said, it's really the right thing to do and should be done. It's the same conversation we had about privacy a year ago when CCPA happened.
Yeah,
it's really the right thing to do, and it feels good to do it, even though it is, it's a lot of work because it's frequently many years of posts. But put a plan in place and just get started on it. And so alt text, I tell every client that I talk to, is a really good place to start. And captions on videos are another really great place to start. It's not just that though, and I think Andrew sort of touched on that. There's a lot more that goes into it. But if you feel like this is a massive project, which it does, at least start there, and then you can tackle each piece. Like, you're not going to get 10 years worth of a website that's 10 years old compliant tomorrow. And there's just nothing you can do about that. So it just is what it is. But if you're taking steps and you're actively trying, that's a good thing. And so I think putting that plan in the place is really the position that I would want to be in. If I was ever the recipient of one of those letters, at minimum, I could just say, look, I know, and we're working towards it. So what can we do? Here's what we're showing you in good faith, and we're not arguing with you or looking for this to be difficult, and sort of go from there.
Fantastic. So I think we've got a few questions about the plugin. So Michelle Price said, and this is the plugin you can run and deactivate and delete. Or Ashley Covelli is asking something to install and then uninstall. And Larisha is saying, is this a plugin just a spreadsheet sheet and you're still manually doing it? So those are some questions about the plugin, Andrew.
Yes, yes, and yes. Right now, it's a really little lightweight plugin, so it won't hurt your site to leave it installed. But yeah, it gives you basically a button where you click it, and it'll just let you download a CSV file, which you can open up in Excel or Google Sheets. And then you can delete the plugin after it if you want, or you can leave it installed so that when we do release new versions, it'll be able to be updated. But it doesn't make any changes on your site directly. So it's not changing anything on the fly, so you don't have to leave it installed. And because the idea fundamentally is I think it's better to actually fix your content than rely on a plugin to be a Band-Aid. So yeah, I think that's all I needed to say on that. Did that answer?
That was, yeah,
Okay.
You did. You totally answered the question. And then Ashley was asking, would you go at alt text in terms of tackling the post in order of popularity, which is a great question. And Andrew, what is your advice on that?
I mean, my instinct would be yes. Jamie, I don't know if you have a legal opinion.
I think it's
hard to say.
Yeah, it's just sort of, if that makes you feel like more comfortable, then yes. But some people do it chronologically, starting from newest to oldest. I'd start now, go backwards, or like you could also do popularity. My only concern with popularity is you could miss something. You know, if you go by popular, you're clearly not going to rank I guess you could rank every single post you've ever had by popularity and go through it this way. But if you do it chronologically, it just might be easier to track.
I think, you know, if we look at it from a legal perspective, you know, it probably doesn't matter. I'm guessing, you know, unless your more popular post is more likely to be seen by a lawyer who's going to sue you.
Possible.
But from a general usability perspective, if you have a post that gets a lot of traffic, it does make sense to fix that first because people are actually seeing that post. So,
agreed.
So, you know, maybe doing a list of your top 10 or 20 posts, you know, get your stats for those and just do those. And then you can go back and run the export file again and, you know, they'll already be fixed.
That's actually, we were looking at it that way too. Kind of a divide and conquer strategy of the most trafficked posts, start there, make that happen, and then kind of go at it then from another standpoint of the easiest way to make sure that we're getting everything through it. Okay, Michelle Bros just said, regarding videos, I have heard for music only, you have to have text saying upbeat music playing in the background. Do you also include text for things like the whir of the mixer, kitchen timer beep, etc.? Jamie. Yes, you do. Was that the answer? Jamie's like,
yeah,
yes.
I mean, anything that's going on that should be described should be described. And you need to leave it there for enough time that someone is able to perceive it. So if it's important to the video, if I'm perceiving it as somebody who's listening to it, you should include it.
Okay. Andrew, anything to add on that answer?
No, I mean, I think it's about conveying the information, right? So if the fact somebody turned on a stand mixer and that's running, then hearing that is helpful to know that the stand mixer is running. So it would make sense to caption that as well, saying, you know, the whir of this, or, you know, maybe that's not a great example, but, you know, another way to think of it is if you're watching a movie and you're looking at the captioning and there's like an off-screen explosion sound, right? That the actors respond to, that's really important information to know because otherwise you'll be lost as to why they're all turning. So the caption will say explosion sound, right?
Yes.
So think of it in the same way as that. If you need to convey the information through a means other than audio, for the message to still get across, then absolutely put it in a caption.
Yep.
Fantastic. Ashley says, thank you. Reverse chronological makes sense. I have thousands of posts from the years, so just trying to make it as little of a headache as possible. Yeah, we all feel you on that. Marianne Kelly says, does the alt text tool include pages and CPT or just posts?
Pages, it should. CPT is custom post types, and I think it may pull from some. We do list the source in the export file, so you'll see whether it says post or page. Do me a favor, run it, and if it's not listing those, shoot me an email, and I'll work with my developer to expand that.
Give us an email, please.
Feedback.
Andrew at NerdPress?
Support at nerdpress.net.
Support at nerdpress.net. We will put that in the comments just to make sure. Okay. Michelle Palin says, where in the Mediavine video upload should we be adding this info that it's a video showing the making of XYZ with upbeat music playing in the background? I haven't been doing this. Michelle, a lot of this is connected to Dashboard 2.0. Those features were added. It's in there. And we have a help doc that can help you with that on adding the closed captioning that we will put in the comments for you. Okay, Jennifer Stewart says, what if you have written words the whole time the music is playing in the background? Do I have to have music playing with the caption?
Is the music important or is it just decorative? If it's just background music, I don't think you're not conveying anything other than like ambiance. I think the description of what's going on would be much more important. Yeah.
So in terms of basically you're wanting to communicate, this isn't trying to catch you. What this is trying to do is enable people to understand fundamentally what's going on. So in terms of being like, but I have to have both and I want to have the most correct answer, which like, yes, I like to do the most correct thing. Basically start from a place of trying to communicate information and make it as clear as possible. Yeah.
I think logic makes a lot of sense here. Like I know lots of people want really black and white rules, but remember that these are guidelines. They're not law, they're not regulations, they're not anything. They're just a set of guidelines that have been set forth. So the easier that you can make it for somebody who is not able to perceive through sight or hearing or all the other accessibility issues, the better it is. So if adding that music is playing will help someone better perceive, it's a good thing to do. And so I think adding more is always great. But, like Andrew said, there is a sliding scale. At a certain point, you don't want to have so much text, no one's seeing your video anymore. And so if it's not adding anything at all and perceiving the music doesn't matter all that much, it may be a decision that you make and you say, for this one, I don't need to include it, but maybe if only music is playing, this is the time that I am going to include it. Or if music is going to help change the mood of the video, it may make sense as well. So I think you just have to sort of make that call on a case-by-case basis.
Oh, one other thing to add too is, let's say you have a video that is only background music. This question was asked in the Mediavine group a week or two ago. Something to consider is you may not need to convey that there's music playing, but by not having any caption, someone may feel like they're missing out, and not having anything there indicates like there's no caption. It's the same thing as not having an alt tag versus having an empty alt tag. An empty alt tag says, hey, we recognize that this is a decorative image, so the screen reader, you can ignore this, it's not important. So even if you just, I think in the first 10 or 20 seconds it says, relaxing music plays throughout, then you've indicated to that person, hey, we've addressed this, you're not missing anything.
Right.
Fantastic. Okay. So Michelle, we already got your question, but if it's all music because natural audio is removed, then we're quote safe on that front because those who don't have ADA accommodations wouldn't need that info already, right? We pretty much answered that. We'll move on. Okay. Amy Sugarman says, so then if you're only doing hands and pans with music, no words, do you need closed captioning? Jamie says.
Yeah, because you have to describe what it is.
Okay. Larisha Bernard says, the consensus is saying you should have something that says background instrumental music playing. Yep, that's what we said. Okay. Michelle Palin, how descriptive should the text be? I mean, can it say video showing the making of XYZ, or do you actually restate the captioning that is already displayed on the video, i.e. then adding flour to the mixing bowl, etc.? Do you want me to repeat?
Wait, sorry.
I'm reading it.
Yeah. She's wanting to know detail on your closed captions for your videos.
If it's video of somebody adding flour to a mixing bowl, you don't need to caption that, right? Because that's both video and captions serve somebody who can see okay. Captions are there for somebody who can't hear it. So, I think as a good exercise, what you can do is you put your video together and then watch it on mute, right? And if it conveys everything it needs to convey just through the action of the video, then you may not need captions, although I still think you should have something about the music just to cover your bases. But it's more if something's off screen, if you're doing it and you're describing it and you're saying, add the flour until the mix becomes a certain consistency, that what you're saying should be captioned, because somebody who can't hear it would be missing that information. Did that make sense?
Yes, it did. It did. Okay. Steve says, is there a way to update alt text and images without updating the post? We are all hesitant to touch or update those top ranking unicorn posts for fear that Google will lower the ranking. Andrew, that's for you.
All right. So technically the post has to be updated because you're updating the content in the post. It's in the actual code. If you want to get into the nitty gritty of it, can you update it without updating the last modified date? WordPress, when you click update, will update the modified date, published date, and modified date stored with every post. If you want, you can install a little plugin from Bill Erickson called Limit Modified Date, which gives you a little checkbox that won't update the modified date when you save. That doesn't really change things too much with Google. I think the bottom line is adding alt tags is an improvement to your site. So if there's any change in rankings, it's probably going to happen anyway. And if anything, Google should see this as making your content better. I know it's scary if you've got something in the #1 position. But I'd say it's the right thing to do, and long-term, it's the right choice. So just do it.
Thank you, Michael Jordan. Okay. Michelle Hall says, I'm sorry. Based on communication, I was only doing the background. Only the background music, but occasional words saying exactly what it is. For example, if I have a video making a salsa, I have words on it, tomatoes, onions, etc. But what I think I hear you saying is I should have words as it goes through saying cutting the tomatoes, cutting the onions, mix in a bowl.
Mm-hmm. No, because I think Andrew answered that question.
If it's video of you cutting onions, you don't need to have a caption that says cutting onions. If it's a video of the salsa and in the off camera, you could hear somebody chopping onions, you might want to have sound of chopping onions.
Or if you say a specific kind of onion that is not perceivable by, like, this is a Vidalia onion, then you'd want that in the caption if you couldn't look at it and tell.
Okay. So if you're providing additional information that might not be perceived.
I think Andrew's advice will really help answer a lot of these sort of nuanced questions, was watch the video without any sound and see if you can perceive every single thing that you want to perceive about that video with the sound. And that'll help you with closed captioning.
Fantastic. Good advice. Okay. We had a question earlier about trellis because obviously it's alive for Mediavine and we wouldn't be here if we didn't have a trellis question. And we had a question about trellis being WCAG compliant. What we have said by our official director of product, Jordan, he says trellis is tested against Lighthouse. Lighthouse is tested against a slew of, is it WCAG? I don't want to say the acronym incorrectly.
WCAG.
WCAG. It is tested against a, quote, slew of WCAG rules, but we cannot 100% with certainty have not tested this, every aspect of it at this point in the beta. But it should be fine since it has been, we're working on Lighthouse standards. So yes, by proxy, it should be good. Judy Piggott, a test question might be, quote, is this information maximizing the ability of the viewer to have the same experience, or is it excessive and getting in the way of the experience? Goes to relevance, to understanding and sharing the content. Love that. Okay, Michelle Brocia said, any thoughts on the services offered for accessibility you can add to your site with a script that gives an access button on the site? Andrew, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so what that question's asking about, little third-party tools like UserWay is one of them. I actually have it installed on nerdpress.net right now, mostly because I was testing it out. And what that does is it has a little floating icon of an accessibility symbol. And if someone clicks on that, it will modify the content of the site. Usually it's visual improvements like increasing font contrast or font size. And it's, I see those as like a Band-Aid. If your theme is really bad, you're super low contrast, you can install that and at least you've got something to cover you. It's not great, but I think it's better than nothing is kind of my take on it. Jimmy, do you?
Something is better than nothing.
I mean, like you said earlier, showing that you're making an effort of some sort, being able to demonstrably show, like, look, I'm trying something. My theme is not great, but I'm trying.
But I think like what Andrew's saying is you don't want to just rest on that.
Of course.
Maybe that's your first step, just to start that process, and then you just keep it going.
That's not going to add alt tags, right?
Exactly.
Alt tags done right require a human brain to do them. There are, and I've looked into some automated tools that are trying to use AI, and yeah, again, it's going to, a crappy tool is going to give you a crappy result. I actually do want to make sure we work in what to put into your alt tags.
Please.
There's a great tutorial on the W3.org website. If you search web accessibility tutorials, I can't add it. I can't add anything to the chat right now. Sorry.
No, we'll pull it up though.
Actually, maybe I can put it in the post chat. Hang on. I think this one's really good because it talks about the different. There we go. Suzanne's doing stuff, so I think she can get it from the host chat. It talks about the different ways images are used. So images can be informative, they can be decorative, they can be functional, and there's other categories like you can have images of text or groups of images or image maps. For most of us, we're talking about informative images, which are the pictures that you're putting in your post. A picture of your finished chocolate cake is informative. Like, this is what the finished recipe should look like. So in that case, you want to describe what the image looks like. There are also decorative images around your site. So any little like squiggly things, or on a recipe card, when it says like prep time, cook time, it has a little clock symbol next to it. Those are decorative images. They don't actually add anything. And if you were to put an alt text there and have the screen reader read it, it would actually be more cluttered. So in the case of decorative images, the correct thing to do is to put an empty alt tag in. So it should be alt equals double quote, double quote. So you're saying, hey, screen reader, I recognize that I've added an alt tag. I recognize that it's empty. Don't clutter things up with this. And then functional images are less common, but if you have an image that links to something else, or an image is a button, in that case, you want to describe the function, not the image. So if it's to submit a form and you have a picture that says something, you're supposed to click on the image, say, it shouldn't describe the image, it should say submit the form or something like that.
And we did share that link is double shared, double power shared. Okay. Yes. Okay. Michelle had a little bit of a pivot here. Font contrast. How does this get measured, and what is the standard? Andrew, will you jump in there?
So there are specific contrast ratios, which is foreground color to background color. You need to have a contrast that's high enough for somebody to see. It's 3.5 for paragraph text, and I think 4.5 for large text. I could be getting that number wrong. But there are tools you can do to scan your site. I saw Lindsay, hi Lindsay, just posted color.a11y. WebAIM has a great tool. Thank you, Suzanne. So you can basically just plug in your colors and it'll tell you, hey, pass or fail. And I will say this is a place where it's an easy site-wide change to make, and it improves things so much. I'm 44, I have pretty good vision, and I'll tell you, the light gray on a white background is really hard to read. So if it doesn't have to be black on white. You can still have some character to it, but having just that minimum contrast at least really helps a lot. So it's a good site-wide change to make for sure.
And another big accessibility thing, plus user experience in general, is line height and font size. Those things are two huge things that you can improve pretty easily. We have posts on those. Don't make it hard for people to consume your content, basically, I think is a good general rule. All right, Jennifer Stewart says, this might be a dumb question, but does all the closed captioning talk apply to videos uploaded to Facebook already, or just on the actual website?
I'm sorry, I was wrestling with my microphone for a second.
That's okay. I'll read it again.
Sorry.
Does our closed captioning advice apply to videos uploaded to Facebook already, or just on the actual website?
I would think you'd want them uploaded already to Facebook?
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah.
I know. I'm thinking about that one too. I mean, going forward, I don't even know if you could change that.
There's not an interface that I've seen.
Does Facebook provide a captioning tool with the images?
YouTube provides closed captioning.
Well, we're having people message and say that we are showing closed captioning here, and we didn't do
we're not seeing that, but that's awesome.
So congratulations to us. We didn't do it, but thank you. We appreciate it. We didn't do it. So it's automagical from Facebook. I don't know.
I believe there's a tool to be able to do it. I don't know that you can go back. That's a good question. We'd have to look at that. I don't know that you can actually go back and fix the old posts. And I'm not even sure that social has even come up yet.
Legally, it's an interesting question of
because it's
yours, or is it Facebook's fault?
Is it Zuckerberg or you?
Yeah.
Marianne Kelly says Facebook provides a captioning tool.
Yeah.
Jennifer says Facebook does it now. So
Yeah.
it would fall on Facebook, not you.
Nothing ever falls on Facebook.
But if they give you a tool, turn it on, right?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, use the YouTube captioning as well, and Instagram as much as you can use it.
Elizabeth Lee Porter says, I have a ton of infographics on my site. How would you go about describing those in alt text, since they are loaded with images and text already in the picture?
So I would say an infographic is by definition an informative image, right? But you also have it's an image of text. I would say in that situation, the best way to do it is to provide the information outside of the image. Similarly to, if you're not doing captioning, you can also do a transcript. that's totally cool, right? You don't need to present it necessarily in the video, right? So if you've got a video of stuff that has the directions, you can have a transcript right below it, and that checks the box. So similarly, if you have an infographic, you can actually have effectively a transcript of the infographic in actual text, not in image below it, because you don't want to stuff all of that information into an alt tag. That doesn't really work. So I think that's how I'd probably recommend doing that. The other advantage of that is Google can read it. So it's going to be much more search engine friendly as well. So you're actually just improving your content in general.
Fantastic. We're all about improving content here. Okay, Rachel Farnsworth says, I'm just chiming in to say thank you for putting this together. I'm the blogger being sued. Lucky me. Sadly, I'm not able to share our defense strategy to help other bloggers figure out what they need to do. All I can say is that I strongly encourage bloggers to make their sites as accessible as possible. It's not even about avoiding lawsuits because someone can sue you even if your site is super accessible already. She learned that the hard way. It's also the right thing to do and the best experience for your users. The work required may seem overwhelming, but I promise it's an overall win and worth the effort. Excellent. We are sorry about that situation, but thank you for the words of wisdom. Marianne Kelly says, fantastic alt text plugin, Andrew. Perfect for the job. It does pull CPT, by the way.
Oh, awesome.
Judy says, sounds like people are panicking about the legal implications, much as we did with GDPR and that sort of thing. Oh my God, did everyone panic about GDPR? Jamie's life was GDPR for like, how many months was that? Like 3?
It's a long time.
It's a long time, a lot of GDPR. And wanting to do things right. Our lives as freelance web developers making a living are overwhelming as it is, so it's understandable that we want a checklist or a plugin to take care of it. In reality, the focus needs to be on those of us who live with these disabilities. Would it be helpful to have some live users who are willing to test drive the changes in a go-to group who can give feedback as you make changes? I think that's a great idea.
Heck yes.
That'd be awesome.
You know, when the web first came out, there was a lot of usability testing that was done. There were these think tanks that would literally bring people into a room and sit them down and make them use a website. And then they would analyze how people used it and ask questionnaires. And the Nielsen Norman group was one of the most popular. They did some amazing accessibility or usability work. So that's the exact same thing is really, it's just usability testing, right? So absolutely, Judy, I think that's an awesome idea.
Totally. Larisha Bernard, I'm curious from your legal standpoint, Jamie, what are your thoughts on uploading videos to platforms that don't have captioning tools available? Instagram, for example, are you legally responsible for hard coding the video before you upload it?
It's your content. It's not Instagram. Well, it's Instagram's content also, but that's a whole other story. That's something completely different. I think at the end of the day, that would be a very challenging defense to make because you uploaded it. You know, it's one of those things. So I wouldn't rest on that.
So, okay. So ultimately you would be liable for that since
I mean, I feel like that's not something that's necessarily been, I don't know that anyone's actually tested that or that's gone to, I mean, there's no law written about it, but I think from a practical perspective, if you're uploading that content and it's your content on your account and you own that content, I feel like the platform you're putting it on I'm not sure it's relevant. Or that platform's job to make those tools accessible if you're able to upload content that you've created outside of that platform.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm sorry. I can only snooze so many of my notifications.
I'm sitting directly in sun, so
I'm really feeling bad for you. And I want to, what I want to do is put my hands up over
there. You go. Look, I
fixed this, and it's not going to help you, but I want to.
I didn't realize the sun was going to move like this. So there you go.
You look luminous. All right.
It's excellent light.
Like a forking angel. Okay. Michelle Brogius says, Trellis keeps eluding us. I am so ready for it. Even beta. We know. Guess who's lurking? It's Eric. Eric says this Facebook Live is saying, quote, captions are auto-generated. Thanks, Facebook. Okay. Michelle Price. So I write in English. Am I only responsible for captioning in English?
I'm going to let Jamie take this one.
Yeah, James.
I don't know how else you would caption.
I suppose in other languages.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
Usually websites are made for the country of which they're coming from. So I think English would be fine.
I don't think anybody's going to get onto you for not having Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Judy says she will happily check into that with her disability alliances and in her user groups and see if that's something that she could put together, which is awesome. Okay.
I have a question for Jamie, if I may. This is something I've been wondering about when we haven't talked about it yet, is an accessibility statement, just like a privacy policy. What are your thoughts, and how should we go about, if we should add one, and how we should go about doing it?
Do you mean like how the website is accessible, I guess is the question?
Like, you know, you have a privacy policy on a website, right? A common recommendation is now to add an accessibility policy that basically says something like, hey, we've worked really hard to make this website as accessible as possible. We're trying to meet the guidelines. It's a process. If you see anything that's not working, please notify us and we will work to correct it. Something like that.
As long as you're in good faith actually doing that, there's no real downside to it. Saying that you have a commitment to it, then as long as it's truthful, it's a great thing. I don't know that it's going to shield you from anything per se, but at least it puts people on notice that you're aware of it. Although I'll say that if your website, if it's clear from your website that you are trying, an accessibility expert is going to know that. So if you put that up there, that's not a magic sort of shield. But I think it's a great thing to do if that is something that you truly want that feedback. I think it's very positive, but don't just rely on that. It's not, you know, writing that magical statement isn't going to stop somebody from suing you.
And there's no, I mean, as we've been talking about this whole live, there's nothing centralized here. There's no precedent. There's no actual, like with a privacy policy. It's a very different set of
privacy is not centralized either. So,
well,
why you guys bring me on for these?
Because I don't feel like it's my fault that you went to law school, friend. I feel like
we gotta do a fun one. When people are like, what is she making us do now?
Why does she always come on and talk about depressing crap and then say it depends every other question? God. At least her hair looks nice. Okay. We had someone ask a question before the live. She's not able to tune in, Elizabeth Barbone, because she has a grocery pickup, which we all understand. She's added alt tags to all of the images in her media library. Do those tags carry to the generated thumbnail? She uses Short Pixel and she doesn't know how to check.
Good question. It is crazy confusing. So Short Pixel doesn't really have anything to do with alt tags. So don't worry about Short Pixel. That is just compressing and optimizing images for the actual image files themselves. The media library has an alt tag field, and that can be used in various places around your site, like in the thumbnails. And really, it's up to your theme. Some themes may use it, some may not. Or plugins, like if you have a recipe index that is showing thumbnails in there, that's not part of your theme, but it's added on. That's really up to the plugin whether or not they pull the alt text and use it, or they use a blank alt text. In a lot of cases, in a category listing or a recipe index, you might actually want to treat those images as decorative. If you've got a link that has an image and the title of the post, having the title of the post as the alt tag doesn't really help. And technically, it's really more of a decorative image because you're not conveying more information other than this is the name of the post. So a theme should take care of that for you. The best way to figure that out is to, you can run the Wave WebAIM tool, which was linked earlier. It's wave.webaim.org, and just scan a specific page. Or you can also do a view source of the page. It's a little scary at first because it's just going to show you all the HTML, but on Chrome Windows, I know it's Control U, but you can right click and hit and select view source, and it'll show the actual HTML. And then you can do a Control F for the alt and search for alt and look at your images, and you'll see your actual alt tags in the code. And so you can, you have to kind of sift through all the code, but you can see what your theme is actually doing. And that's really the only way to get the answer to your question, because there's so many ways this could be set up.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of different places to have to go look, and a lot of places to try to cross-reference and check. Could you make a short list of places to start? Look, so you would say this will be, because we're running out of time. So the final thing I will have you guys ask answer is a short list of things to start doing now. We've already acknowledged that for people who've been blogging for long periods of time, there's no way to become compliant overnight. There's no way to make all these changes in the next week or maybe even month, unless you have a team of people working with you and a lot of time on your hands. So actions that are positive to take today, this week, and then an action plan to lay out for yourself moving forward in the future would be what I will have both of you guys think about. And then Andrew, on yours, can you please make sure to cover where people need to look to see what's being output in terms of alt tags for their thumbnails, for their images, for all the various places they need to check, that would be very helpful. And I will make a quick announcement, which that is that next Thursday, which is the 21st, for those who like numbers, is our final episode of Teal Talk Season 2. It is with Kayla Sloan of KaylaSloan.com, Six Figure Systems, and 10K VA. We are talking everything VA. We're talking about how to add that as an income stream if you're interested in that. We're talking about ways to find a VA if you're on the lookout for one. So basically anything involving the VA, you need to be in it. You need to be in it, all up in on it. Jamie, will you please answer the question?
Yeah, so I think first going to the guidelines and just reviewing them, understanding those 4 categories and approaching it really logically. So just really thinking to yourself, like if somebody was using my website and they had to use alternative technologies in order to view it, like the screen readers, for example, or if you were, a person who was deaf or had difficulty hearing, like how would you be perceiving my website? I don't know. I trust Andrew completely. So I don't know about that. I trust you completely, man. But I don't know about that plugin, but it sounded like that plugin is a really good place to start, to just have something and to feel like you've checked something off the list. So that's one place to start. And then I think putting a plan in action for your alt tags and closed captioning is probably the next place to go. And so just familiarizing yourself with what those guidelines say. They are really overwhelming. I think you put that short, because there's like sort of a short version, not a short version, but I think you put that's the one that I go to, because I'm not a tech person. Like I call Andrew for that, but I'm able to understand what those 4 categories look like, and they make it very, very clear about what some of the things you need to look at. So it sounds like you just may want to sort of evaluate it. And if you truly can't, then look for an accessibility expert who might be able to at least look at your website and tell you some of the issues. But I do caution you, I know there's some out there that charge extraordinary amounts of money and don't give you very much. So get a referral for whoever would be a good accessibility expert to do that kind of audit on your site.
I think another big step to add to what you just said is probably to make sure you're doing the right things for your new posts. So let's just start there with our existing, the content we're putting out now. Let's be on top of that. Okay, Jamie, we are going to put where we can find you at #legal if people have questions, or if they do receive one of those unfortunate letters in the mail, they know where to find you. Thank you so much for being here. Andrew, to you, same question, please.
So ditto, first of all, I think that was great. And I just posted a link to the quick reference guide that you were mentioning. So I'm actually going to refer you to my second post with Mediavine. That was 6 ways to make your website more accessible, because that's part of the initial hit list. And they talk about font contrast and alt tags and a few other things. So let's make sure we link to that in the notes, because I think that's a great place to start. I had one other really good thing I wanted to say, and it just fell right out of my head.
I'll come back.
But I think getting an audit is a great idea. Definitely get a reference. As long as you start working on it, I think that's great. The other thing is really start to understand how to write good alt tags. We shouldn't be doing this just for compliance. We should be doing it to make our sites better for all of our readers. So there's a great decision tree that WCAG, or the W3 Accessibility Initiative has, that basically gives you a decision tree on what to put in your alt tags. I'm going to post that in real quick to the chat, but that's like choose your own adventure of, like, it asks you, like, does this image do this? No. Okay, go here. And so it tells you what to do. So if you're ever not sure of how to put the alt tag in there, that can help you. And I'm just going to say again, don't keyword stuff your alt tags. That was an old SEO trick. Doesn't work anymore, and all it does is annoy people. So make sure you're not repeating the title of the post in every alt tag. That's not really compliant. So think like a human. The answer to all this stuff is
always,
does it right for your humans? And so this is just a broader audience of humans than you may have considered beforehand. That's really the difference.
Broaden your perspective of the abilities of your audience, please. And think like a human always. Why not? Just to give a quick little plug to our episode next week, Larisha, thank you. The perfect one. We're going to need to hire one of those VAs to update alt tags. So yeah, Perfect. Come watch us next week for the season finale of Teal Talk, and follow us on all our social media platforms so you don't miss out on any of the great posts. We have great guests like Jamie and Andrew there all the time, and then our in-house friends too that have a lot of expertise. And definitely subscribe to our YouTube because we're sharing our conference videos there all the time. And these guys are conference speakers, so you want to catch Andrew's, and Jamie's is already up there. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Jamie, I don't want to keep you in the sun or away from the trap music any longer. So
the sun is unbelievable. It actually feels kind of nice. I'm not going to lie.
That's probably the most we've all gotten. Yeah, I feel like I'm getting sun proxy, but this is nice.
It's really good. I'm cool with it.
Andrew, thank you so much. Thanks, guys, as always, and have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.